Hey everybody, happy Friday. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Sat down at my desk to do this live recording and my keyboard was dead. I've forgotten I left it on and it died, so I had to run and get a cord. Um, so it is not only Groundhog Day 2024, but it is also the second day of Black History Month. And um, I observe it. I observe Black History Month because I do think it's important. I wish we didn't have to have a month. I wish we just talked about history more. But since it exists, and I have no issue with it existing, I know a lot of people say, "Why do we have that? We shouldn't have it." And I agree. That's starting to play jazz in the background. I agree that it's a shame, but we are where we are because our history is what it is, and we can't go back and unravel that. We do have a history in this country of racism and slavery and all those things. There is truth to that. Where I depart from the anti-racists and the social justice warriors is in wanting to perpetuate the myth that it is in the sauce. You know, it is part of capitalism, it's part of, whiteness, is was written into our constitution and all that. No, it wasn't. In fact, our constitution was written with the seeds of slavery's demise for all humanity, by the way, not just for Black Americans. And since there is still slavery going on in Africa and parts of the Middle East, obviously, slavery hasn't ended, racism hasn't ended, and yet in the West it has, at least slavery, obviously, and racism is or was on its deathbed. And what I see with, Ibram X. Kendi and people like that who want to make race essential and the center of everything, is a return to segregation, a return to these ideas that we can't be e pluribus unum. And I disagree, strongly disagree. I am much more aligned with those who say it's an aspirational goal, but we can get there. And we will get there if we get back to treating it that way. And we give our fellow Americans of every skin tone the respect of holding them to the same standards that we would hold ourselves. And, it is absurd to me. I was just thinking about this before I sat down, that it is considered racist to grade a student, to suspend a student, uh, if they're Black, to talk about how they're not doing well in school, that all these things are considered racist, or that it is racist to not want sort of segregated spaces and all these things. That's racist. And I find it just it's baffling to me. My brain literally doesn't work to say that it is, to agree with that, because I feel like it's the opposite. I have a friend right now who's running for office in Utah, and she's mixed race. She, I would say, looks more Black than white, but, so she's getting the same degree of hatred thrown at her in her campaign because she supports an anti-DEI bill. In other words, to remove it from public spaces, remove it from schools, remove this toxic requirement and ideology, and but literally, like, take it out as at just as much as you would have taken out religion from the public square, because it's not only not grounded in reality, but it's just toxic when you start enforcing it with the police power that government brings. And she told me she's not getting it as much from other Black people in Utah. She's getting it from white people, white left-leaning people who are telling her, they're telling her she's racist. And this is a woman who grew up in foster care. This is a woman who is literally the story of that, that everyone keeps telling us about trauma, childhood trauma, and all the things. She lived that and made it to where she is now. And here are these middle and upper middle class white women telling her that she is racist because she opposes DEI. And I get so angry because I think, isn't that the limit? Something like my grandmother would say. You've got people who are so angry that somebody might want to take away their excuse. Think how racist it is to wanna maintain the idea that you derive virtue. You don't have to do anything. You just have to support a policy that segregates and separates and identifies this as this and that, and these are oppressors, these are oppressed, and teaches it to children. And then poof, you're washed clean of any threat of anyone calling you racist. That when your belief that this is necessary to advance the interests of Americans who are black or brown is in and of itself racist. That you don't look at people regardless of race and say, no, this isn't necessary. Everybody's equally capable of achieving. It's certainly by race. This isn't about the skin color. This might, we can have conversations about their childhood or their maybe even their socioeconomic status in terms of what it affords them: books, access to nutrition, is there a father in the home? We can't even have those conversations that those things might really be impacting the life of a young child and their ability to learn and grow and so forth, the quality of their school. We can't even talk about it until we have this agreement somehow that it doesn't matter as long as your skin is black, then somehow you are less everything. And you live in a world where there's always an obstacle in your way. And it just blows my mind how incredibly bigoted that is. And the test of it is substitute anything else for black. It's hard to do because there's just been such an overwhelming emphasis on it, but just substitute anything else. Substitute Jewish, Armenian, Asian, Chinese if you want to be very specific. But I'm just like, black doesn't describe, everybody from Africa, certainly. I think the people in Tunisia and Morocco and Egypt, and by the way, there's black people in Israel, but they talk about Israel as being all white. So, I mean, race gets messed up when we start having these conversations about people having a need for something extra. It's not because of race. It's because of something else. And that's the thing you should talk about, not the skin color. That just is very othering. We can talk about poverty and its impact on education. We can talk about all these things. But if you're going to divide the world into systems of power and oppression by arbitrary, externally visible characteristics, you're not going to go anyplace good with that. And so with that in mind, I have always supported Black History Month and the idea that our students in American schools should spend the time to focus on all the amazing stories of and contributions to American history by Black Americans, in no small part because we are talking about a small minority of people. Honestly, I wouldn't really have an issue either, but for the fact that, you know, it I mean, people would reject it, I think, but I wouldn't have a problem with like a Jewish history month or an Asian history month or any other month where we set aside time because we are a pluralistic, melting pot kind of thing. Um, Black history is a little special because of slavery. It's a little different. Although, like I said, Chinese people are another diaspora people. So they've added to every country they've ever been in and, built so much of America. So I wouldn't have a problem with that because I do think it's important for us to appreciate each other by looking at the contributions that different populations of our immigrants have made. Maybe we just divide it up into, American stories and don't make it about Black or Asian or whatever, but really just pull out people who are from different immigrant backgrounds or from different backgrounds, Black African slave background, but we also have people who are Black here who are they're not AWO, not from slavery. So just pull out excellent contributions of people that we don't often hear about and have the only common thread be not that they aren't white, but that they are not people we talk about in the natural course of events. They're not the founding fathers. They're not the inventor of the light bulb, but there's not like something like humongous, right? Whatever, but they did make contributions. I would, by the way, add to that list people like Carnegie and Henry Ford and all this good, bad, and the ugly. Good, bad, and the ugly. There's plenty ugly about Henry Ford, but there's also things that he did that he gave us like the assembly line. So we need to have to tell these stories so that our children grow up understanding the complex nature of this country, but also the beauty of this country, which is that people could come from all over the world, and um, contribute, benefit, and build it, be part of it. My life, as I've said before on this channel, my life, my views, my values are shaped by this history too. Black history is my history. I'm not Black, but I wouldn't be me without so many things, from Harriet Tubman to MLK to Thomas Sowell to Walter Williams to Carol Swain to Bob Woodson to Thelonious Monk and all the other jazz greats to Sidney Poitier. I mean, I'm not just throwing names around. These are people that have, like, made me who I am. I would be less than me. I would be a lesser person. I wouldn't want to be the person that had never heard of these people. And so I don't want our kids to miss out on it either. And it was with that in mind that I sat down today and I said, I want people to know that Black History Month, because I think it's so easy to look around and see what's dominating our classrooms and our headlines and say, oh, we should just not have it. And that is exactly the wrong thing. I do not want to see the backlash to the way that they're using it, Black History Month, make us not celebrate Black History Month. If that makes sense. It has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by BLM. It's been hijacked, BLM in schools and things like that. And so what I want to do is, rather than show you I'll show you a little bit of the negative to drive the point home that it's been hijacked. I don't know if I need to. If you're already in my audience and you're already a member, I probably don't. But I'll just give you some examples, because I do think, it's relevant to what we're talking about. Let me pull some stuff up on the screen here, and then we'll talk about what it's supposed to be. So first thing I noticed from my feed, this came up today, and I'm sorry, let me close this. I'm like trying to do 10 different things here, having a conversation over here. All right. So we have this. This is what's being taught to your kids. So this is 2024's BLM week in schools. In addition to gender ideology lessons and socialist Marxist indoctrination, the radical, they call it indoctrination. I'm going to, from now on, 2024 is my year of calling it what it is, which is social engineering, because they're not actually indoctrinating. That's part of it. But the real thing is they're trying to socially engineer. They're trying to change the world view overall of our children. So they scrubbed the, it's full of, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel type of material. They had once taken it out, but now they've put it back in. So this is the resource guide. It says BLM at school is committed to teaching truthful histories and amassing the powerful practices, creative tools, and key strategies by which past, present, and future generations can advance the struggle of Black progress-oriented dialogue, secure, et cetera. So again, it's centered in struggle. And then here are some lovely graphic care packages from Just Seeds collaboration with Black Lives Matter at School. As you can see, it is all pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, anti-Israeli. End the occupation. There's no occupation. That is a lie. And stop the killing. How about of the hostages? How about of Israelis? Movement, Palestine, subjects, etc. So this is what they have. This is all part of the same curriculum. And then we also have, these are the topics within BLM in school. Look at this, Black and Asian solidarity. So that's the other reason why, if we fail to recognize the and celebrate excellence of all Americans more consistently, more intentionally. And I know I'm sounding like a social justice warrior. I'm not saying the government should force you to do it. I'm suggesting that we do this with our kids and not look at the little Asian boy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you teach American history and about inventors, like, try to mix it up a bit. Just try to, that's all I'm saying. There's a big difference between saying, hey, make a concerted effort to, mix up your palette of stories that you tell your kids, so they start seeing us as e pluribus unum, as opposed to make sure you have an Asian person or else somehow you're a bad person for not doing it. No, do or don't. If you can't find one that you want to tell us, then don't. There's no shame. That's fine. I'm just saying, if you can, do. And I'm also not saying scrape the bottom of the barrel and find some Marxist somewhere either. They'll be like, oh, we need to talk about someone Hispanic. Let's go find Cesar Chavez. No, I'm not saying that. You know, like the less political your example, the better, in my opinion. In fact, I would like purposely work on, especially for young children, leaving out the political examples because that is not necessarily an example of excellence. Unless you're talking about an MLK or even a Malcolm X, where they rose to a level of prominence where they literally influenced the law of the land. And then you sort of have to teach it. Or they were elected to public office or did something prominent in the military. Okay. But activists are not heroes. Activists didn't do anything, didn't make anything, didn't create anything except noise. And unfortunately, I see a lot of that with these kinds of things, solidarity. These are Marxist terms. Then justice through sprinkle, migrant justice, but we're also concerned with decolonization. That seems sort of contradictory to me. So that's, one way that they're hijacking with this Black Lives Matter stuff this year. They're not only hijacking it for, a Marxist type of propaganda, they're hijacking it for Marxist propaganda that's nothing to do with Black American history at all. Does that have anything to do with it? No. Now, people say, well, those are just curriculum resources. Why are they, though? Why are they in the packet for BLM at school? Right? Another thing that I looked up, and this will be relevant if you've watched the video I did yesterday with Daniel Buck publicly about teaching methods, and that is when if you were to go and look at images of ways to decorate classrooms or activities to do in the classrooms, lessons, etc. What you will find if you just look up images is you're going to also, like Google it or whatever, and then just look up the resources and what you see. Now, this is correct. Black history is American history, but when you enlarge it, this is a teach starter. So I'm going to try to blow this up if I can, if it will open. I don't know why it's not opening. It won't open for me. Oh, wait, here it is. I want to visit this. Okay, Black History Month, ideas, bulletin board ideas. So, some of them are good, some of them, very questionable. Like here we have, Time Magazine covers. I actually love this one because these are actual accomplished people. We're putting them up there. It's a wide variety of different people, things they've done. If they made it to cover of Time, chances are they contributed something, even if it was controversy. So we can spark conversations. But this drives the point home. Black history is American history. No question about that. We also have a bunch of these people. Now, one thing I do notice, however, is that it says just a few Black women. These are Black women specifically. So there's that. But also they primarily are, there's a lot of figures over there who are, one might say, from the left. Okay. So that you'll see that. That's one way that it gets hijacked. But where I take issue with it is when they specifically focus on like Angela Davis, for example, and put a lot of energy into Angela Davis, or they put a lot of energy into some of the other people who are very pro-Marxist, pro-communist. And it just gets hijacked to stop telling the story of Black excellence in America and start telling the story of Black oppression. So, and we have to, it's just like, wait, don't we have to talk about that? Yes, but that wasn't the purpose of Black history. Well, what was the purpose of Black history, Deb? And that is what I'm going to tell you. So now we're going to go to one of my favorite resources for exploring this purpose. And it is, believe it or not, the History Channel. Leaving aside all their content on aliens, they do a great job with Black History Month. So here we have their section on Black History Month. And it goes through the origins of it, what it's for, the current theme, and photo galleries. And I'm going to pop around here and also show you some other great materials for teaching Black history so that if you are inclined to teach it, if you're inclined, to your own kids, or if you are a teacher, or if you're inclined to, just for your own mind, like what's out there that I missed in school and that I don't even know exists. Here, you can go here. So this is something that I bet you the people who came after me last weekend, by the way, for my criticism of the, Black racial pride campaign of Black Joy in Target, I bet they don't know the actual origin of Black History Month. That it's an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans at a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. It is not a time to study Black struggle. It is not a time to center Black voices of the struggle. It is not a time to talk about Black politics and issues of poverty and voting rights and this and that and the other. It is not. It is not a time of Black activism. That is not its purpose. And you can say, okay, white lady, like it's not for you to decide. You're right. It's not for me to decide. How about it's the position of the people who created Black History Month, and for, that it's now called Black History Month. They called it that. They have a whole set of materials for it. They get, money from our government to go into schools and all that. It is not to be hijacked and co-opted for every last little political goal that some Black person somewhere might have. That's just not what it's for. And I do have a problem with that, because when you start taking up what is already only 1 month, and it's already intruding into classrooms amidst everything else they have to learn, and you're going to use that time for activism and politicking, you're displacing these stories. These kids are actually growing up not knowing who these people are. They're not, or they're only knowing the tiny subset of the Angela Davises of the world. Angela Davis, Malcolm X, people like that. Okay, so also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of Negro History Week, the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. Other countries around the world, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also devote a month to celebrating Black history. Celebrating, not activating, not raising awareness, none of that. It's not what it's for. Like I said, the whole rest of the year is so-called summer of love. Anytime something bad happens with the police, anytime somebody Black does anything, currently present day, it becomes about the Black experience. There are schools all over this country that have, African American clubs, African American studies, African American this, African American that, to elevate present day issues way more than they ought to be in the public square paid for with public tax dollars. This is supposed to be celebrating Black history so our children do not grow up ignorant of not just that there was a struggle, but the progress. How are you going to see progress from struggle to freedom if you don't ever see that it happened? If every time it comes up, it's for the purpose of emphasizing how we're not done yet, or it didn't work. I'm going to clean my glasses because all I'm seeing are the spots on my glasses. I apologize. You ever want to see Deb looking old? There. Got a lot of that over the weekend when people were criticizing me for criticizing Target. I got a lot of Deb's a prune, Deb is a crone, Deb is an old white hag. I got a few calls to commit suicide, a few death threats. Yeah, that was fun. Anyway, and all because I wanted to celebrate Black history with Black history, and I thought that Target was just disgraceful for using it as a means to emphasize struggle. Now, they do it deceptively. They'll call it Black Joy, but what is that? That's like Black Lives Matter. Who said they didn't? Black Joy. Why is it different than regular joy? These are all subtle, very subtle, so that your first instinct, if you don't think very long about it, is, what's your problem? So they're just looking for ways for Black people to celebrate. And why? It's not all of us celebrating Black History Month as Americans. It's looking for Black people specifically, because somehow they can't otherwise experience joy the rest of the year. They can't experience joy in relation. It has to always be in relation to white people. That is the definition of segregation and racism, and centering struggle in your life and making it so that your existence is gatekept every moment of the day, which it isn't. It demonstrably isn't. But if people want to live in that space and pretend that Jim Crow is still going on, and Target's there, happy to help you put a smile on your face in spite of the fact that you're so oppressed. And I think it's sad. So anyway, So that's what it's supposed to be about. Now we go to what is the actual theme this year, and it is African Americans in the arts. Would you have known that? Would you have ever known that if you weren't following me and I didn't tell you that? Probably not. Because everywhere you look, there are gonna be power fists. There's gonna be black, green, and red, which in case you haven't figured it out and didn't notice it on the Palestine posters, these are absolutely the colors of Marxism. Every place you look, these are colors that are associated with Marxist causes, communist and socialist party movements, workers' movements. Those are those colors. But not a whole lot about the Black Renaissance, about Black arts, about, even about hip hop. Okay. Very sad to me. We've had next year is going to be African Americans labor. All right. Last year was Black resistance, which again was historical resistance. Black health and wellness, Black family representation, identity, and diversity. They cover that. You could argue this is, woke, or you can argue whatever you want. But the fact of the matter is there is a theme. And every year's theme is not struggle. Every year's theme is not, it's, different movements, the different things. This year it's art. You wouldn't know that. Now, other things on the History Channel that I would call your attention to. There's a little film here that's quite good about how the story of Black History Month began in 1915. There's a story about Carter G. Woodson, who was the creator of it. And you can read through all of that. Then there's more information on the theme itself. So if you're actually looking for, what is going on in Black History Month officially, what is it supposed to be? Not what the retailers and your public school are saying. Here it is. But what I would like to see more people take a look at is something that I think is more uniting, and that's 1776 Unites. It is a movement and a curriculum. It's a movement to inspire tens of millions of Americans to become agents of their own uplift. It's a phrase that is now in my mouth and I use a lot. I think it's true of all of us. I don't care who we are. And by embracing the true founding values of our country, those founding values are universal. They don't belong to white people. Just because they were written down by white people doesn't mean they belong to white people. Crispus Attucks was the first person to die in the War of Independence. And that ought to be more of a symbol than it is. These values belong to all of us just because it took a while for all of us in the United States of America to embrace those values and want to champion and cherish them does not mean that what was put down in the Constitution did not plant those seeds. This is an opportunity all year, but especially this month, for all of us to be reminded that we all belong here. Every American has, contributed and or has the potential to contribute to the fabric of our society in a positive, constructive way. And the more we teach our kids that they can't because hurdles, you're swimming upstream, oh, the horrible white people, well, that is not going to get anybody better off. Anybody of any race, we all suffer. So it's a nonpartisan, although people will tell you it's not, oh, it's conservative. It's a nonpartisan and intellectually diverse alliance of writers, thinkers, and activists, including activists, focused on creating solutions for our country's greatest challenges in education, culture, and upward mobility. We're a project of the Woodson Center, a nonprofit organization that has worked for decades. Yeah, remember Woodson, Carter Woodson? And then now we have another Woodson who is in charge of this. Okay, there he is. Read more about the Carter Woodson Center here. And then next tab goes over to the Woodson Center. And there we have the gentleman in question right there. The Woodson Center mission is to empower community-based leadership. And then we have, there's curriculum, there's, mission and vision, history, how we help, news and media, all that. There's so much here. It's also a very worthy recipient of any charity that you might want, or if you're looking for charity. Voices of Black Mothers United. There's a movement you can join there, community affiliate network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So many not everyone is in lockstep alignment with what is going on with Black Lives Matter and so forth and so on. Not even close, but you wouldn't even know it, would you? Mainstream media is not covering them. They don't have 1776 unites in the classroom. They have Black Lives Matter in the classroom, and we know for a fact that Black Lives Matter was on the receiving end of propaganda support even during the 2016 election. And even they acknowledged it. There is an article, I'm going to bring that up so that you can see how much this kind of stuff gets hijacked, even by our enemies. Let me bring up this article. And this is written by somebody who is by no means any kind of friend of mine, let me tell you. I mean, somebody I would agree with on a daily basis. This is Jelani Cobb. He is the dean of the Columbia Journalism School. So you can imagine we probably disagree about 99% of everything. But what he documents here is accurate. The enduring Russian propaganda interest in targeting African Americans. And I'm going to skip ahead to the meaty part. During the Cold War, Soviet school curricula highlighted the exploitation of Black people as a prime example of both American hypocrisy and of the rapacious nature of the capitalist system. Now, he might agree with those statements. Just so you know, that's part of where we might disagree. But even he doesn't want the Russians using the Black community to advance their interests. Isn't that interesting? I don't know how much he agrees. I'm just saying he might. Don't read into this that he doesn't agree that, capitalist system is bad, but he's still calling us out. During the Great Depression, African Americans were invited to live and work in the Soviet Union as a means of escaping the privations of Jim Crow. A few hundred accepted the offer, and some of their descendants still live in Russia. Yelena Kanga, a Black Russian television personality and a granddaughter of one of the Black sojourners, an agronomist from Mississippi named Oliver Golden, noted in a memoir that the Soviets, while legitimately interested in the knowledge of those African Americans, they were skilled workers and professionals after all. I'm sure they were not unaware of the value of appearing to upstage the United States on matters of race. In 1932, the Soviets invited a group of Black American artists, including the poet Langston Hughes, to Russia to make a never-completed film about American racism called Black and White. Communist publications of the United States hired Black writers and advocates for racial equality. They advocated for racial equality, not because they genuinely cared. I'm sure you understand that, right? Let's see. Many, if not most of the Black civil rights leadership of that era had at least glancing contact with the Communist Party of the United States. So again, when you've heard, that the FBI was watching Martin Luther King, they weren't wrong. They did have contact with the Communist Party because the Soviets were recruiting them. They were actively trying to do that. So any reports that were gathered, and I'm not excusing COINTELPRO, and I'm not excusing our government for its Red Scare stuff. I'm simply saying they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. There were communists, and they were being recruited, and to watch out for what was going on was not completely out of the realm of sanity. It's just the way they went about it was kind of shitty. All right. Let's see. In the Soviet Union, the relationship was, however, as vexed as any other between an exploited community and the state. So he's got that right. Communities that have been exploited, or the state is not your friend. The state isn't going to solve your problems. Your neighbors are your friends, not the state. Because remember, it was the state that forced segregation on Black people and Jim Crow. Those were laws mandating segregation. People forget that. They keep acting like Jim Crow laws allowed it. No, they mandated it. If you had a lunch counter and you wanted to serve Black people, you were not allowed because the state said no in the South. In those states, the laws, these segregated laws of white this and Black that and colored water fountains, those were laws mandating separation. The state's not your friend. So, in 1937, when Lovett Fort Whiteman, one of the first Black recruits to the American Communist Party, ran afoul of the party bureaucracy in the USSR, where he'd been living, he was arrested and he was eventually sent to the Gulag, just like everybody else, where 2 years later, he died from malnutrition. The novelist Richard Wright, who was closely aligned with the American Communist Party early in his career, rejected it bitterly during the Second World War, convinced that it was merely using Black people to its own ends. Yet so intertwined were communist and Soviet interests in matters of racial discrimination in the United States, the subject has spawned an entire subfield of African American and Cold War history, which, by the way, is not talked about enough. And I'm hoping and praying to find somebody to come on my channel to talk about it this month because it needs to be discussed. So Now he gets to it. That propaganda tradition of the old Soviet Union came back into view this week. This is in 2018. So think how it is now. After the Senate Intelligence Committee released 2 reports on attempted Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, which highlighted how those efforts targeted African Americans. According to one of the reports produced by experts at the social media research firm New Knowledge, in conjunction with researchers at Columbia University and Canfield Research, the Internet Research Agency, a company based in St. Petersburg, Russia, created an expansive cross-platform media mirage targeting the Black community, which shared and cross-promoted authentic Black media to create immersive influence ecosystem. So they enmesh themselves in that same world of like Black activism, but with very specific messaging. The IRA, which is owned by an ally of Vladimir Putin, posted more than 1,000 YouTube videos relating to Black Lives Matter and police violence. It created 30 Facebook pages directed at African Americans that attracted more than 1 million followers. It created knockoff accounts such as Black Matters and outright false ones such as Blacktivist to amplify content that was primarily intended to sow dissension. Communist ideology, of course, was no longer part of the equation, but attempting to undermine American authority was. One objective appeared to be planting concerns about Hillary Clinton and racism as a means of depressing Black vote. So and then it talks about Alicia Garza, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, even noticing the uptick in sort of fake accounts. Even she was noticing this. So the point being that this hijacking even that's going on today, Black Joy, this and that. Now the individuals creating the, Black Joy, the artist or whatever, I'm not saying this is a Russian spy. What I'm saying is that I bet if you unravel and trace the money back that like feeds into the social media propagation of these ideas that create the market for this kind of idea and so forth, you will find our enemies. Because ideas that sort of segregate us, create segregated joy, apparel that only Black people can wear, merchandise that only Black people are going to want to buy in an otherwise American establishment, American store. In other words, it's not a store that is in a Black neighborhood that's specifically geared towards like African immigrants who want stuff from home or whatever, or, it's not attempting anything cross-cultural. It's not, it's saying, here's some stuff that you Black people can buy for for yourselves. Nobody else. And I was accused of feeling excluded. You feel excluded. Why are you so sad that you can't? And I've said it before. I don't care that I'm excluded. I'm concerned that you're so eager to exclude, that you are saying that your progress and your liberation as an individual or as a Black person, if you're going to cluster yourself into a group, is a function of me being pushed to the outside. That is what I reject. That's the part that I reject. And it's insidious. So I did my Target post. And again, if you haven't seen it, you can go to my account and see it. I just said Target is insufferable and put pictures of the Black Joy campaign. But am I that crazy? Look what just got posted today. Jeep Melanin Edition. Now, Melanin is a clothing brand. Melanin can have a clothing brand for Black people all it wants. That's capitalism. Go for it. If you really want to do that, that's fine. It's just we're moving away from the brands that was like, hey, that's a brand by P. Diddy or this or that. And, you'd be weird if you, the white person, wore it. Maybe a little borderline, a little weird, but it's not really that weird. And, loungewear, stuff like that. But you put Melanin on a clothing brand, it's pretty clear. Okay. So there's that. Again, free market, do what you want. There's obviously Black hair products and stuff that don't work my hair, but this is clothing. Anyone can wear a shirt. Anyone can wear a sweatshirt. But the Jeep is allowing themselves to be aligned here. So we now have a melanated Jeep girl. What? We have Jeep, but with the colors that aren't white. See, you understand what I'm saying here? It's not, oh, wow, I'm not included. I don't need Jeep apparel, but no one does. Like this, look at me. I'm not white. We get it. We see that. Never before in our history has all the people fighting for civil rights were not fighting to stand out and be noticed instead of. That's not what they were fighting for. It's just not. It's a form of, it's subtle, market-based, kind of, it's a weird way to get your revenge or to stand out is by singling yourselves out. It's just strange. I wouldn't like this if it was, you know, Jewish Jeep. Ew. Why? How does that help me? Melanated duck? I'm confused. First of all, we can all see the person wearing the sweatshirt. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I put this on, you'd be like, what are you doing? That's not for you. And that is exactly the point. So 1776, I believe, is an antidote to that. It is an empowerment organization, but it's not exclusive. You notice that it tells stories. They have quite a wide range of scholars. It's not, uniform. They've written letters to Barnes and Noble as an example, to consider broadening their recommendations because the selected titles, this is in 2021, they're already saying, they define Blacks solely through the lens of victimization. And that's what I'm seeing. You've got to put yourself up in melanated clothing. It's like, what? Okay. So there's that. Then we have also another, there are stories in here. People have asked me about this, like, oh, do you know Tulsa? Yes, I know about Black Wall Street. I also know it was rebuilt. Have you ever heard that story? No, but you can find it on 1776 Unites. You can find this, how it was rebuilt. That's the real story. It's the whole story is the real story. In other words, it's awful what happened. And by all means, tell that story. I'm not saying whitewash it. Tell the story. But is it really the full story if you leave it there? Or do you say, in spite of that, they rebuilt? They rebuilt. And that's, a pretty great story. Also on there, you will find the works that 1776 Unites thinks every American should read. And I 100% agree. So I'm going to, hopefully over this weekend, I'm going to take these, add them to my Amazon lists, which I think I've put in the resources of my Amazon list of books. But if I haven't, I'll make sure I go do that in the Discord. If you're a member of my Discord, if you're a member of just YouTube, then you won't see it, which is why you should join Woke Screen. Hint, hint. Because you'll get access to not just this video, but like all this other cool stuff. And I will make this up, add this to my Amazon list for all these books as a specific list. They might already have one over there. You could check. But these are fantastic books. The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, An American Slave, Soul of Black Folk, Up from Slavery, Parting the Waters, Personality. I promise you they're not having the kids read these books. They're just not. We also have all of these. These are books. I've read Race Crazy, fabulous book. But you also have Why the Jews. You also, which is a fantastic book too. Agency by Ian Rowe, Black Eye for America. And people say, oh, these are all conservatives who've written over blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, if we have to put a separate list that you can easily identify as conservative writers, what does that tell you? That they're not included when there are lists of Black writers that are talking about these things. They're not included. And by the way, they're not all hardcore conservatives either. They might lean that way, but they are considered conservative only in some of them only in relation to Marxists. Some of these people were lifelong Democrats until the Democrat Party went completely Marxist. So I'll make a list and then you can find it. But it is concerning to me that this has occurred as far as, race Marxism. And what do I mean by race Marxism? And by the way, it's a book. You can also read that by James Lindsay. It's what all it is, in its simplest term, is you replace class in Marxian theory with race to divide. And you say essentially that whiteness is, it's capitalism. All it is capitalism. And obviously I'm not the only person to say this, but I'm also not saying it because anybody else that you might have heard of us on it. Have you got my drift? Those of you who watch me regularly know what I'm intimating over here. But no, it's The enemy that they're trying to destroy is free market capitalism, Western Enlightenment, all of that. Right now, what we have is it's not just a pure war against capitalism, though. It's just that race is sort of a stand-in for, the class struggle. That's all it is. That's what race Marxism is, basically. I'm grossly oversimplifying, but hopefully you get what I'm saying is what can we divide the Americans on? Well, we've never really gone in for the class warfare a little bit, but we've never gone all the way. But we have had some pretty significant riots over race. We have had a civil war because of slavery that was race-based. So our enemies, Russia, China, Iran, would love nothing more than to see us divided over race. Black Lives Matter gets a ton of money from foreign sources. Black Lives Matter is absolutely a Marxist organization. They are unapologetic about it. Patrisse Cullors has said so. She received training explicitly from communists and admits it. So why would anyone be surprised when I have a visceral reaction to something going on that plays right into race Marxism, right into the neo-segregationist playbook? Claudine Gay had and defended segregated dorms. So this Black History Month, I hope people will remember what it was supposed to be, what it still can and should be. And I'm also going to encourage you / give you a homework assignment to watch a video, or not a video, a movie. If you haven't already seen it, the whole thing. I bet a lot of you have seen it. But if you haven't seen it, sorry, my nose is really itching me. If you haven't already seen it, see it. But I'm not allowing you to not watch the best scene of all. So we're going to play the 2-minute, 37-second scene right here and now because I can never get enough of it. This is Sidney Poitier. This is his father. His father's been a mailman his whole life. So many years. He's now retired. So he carried a heavy bag, as mailmen used to do, in all kinds of weather. His son has grown up to be a doctor, world-renowned doctor. And they are now both at the home of the son's white fiance. Mind you, this is in the 60s. And they're there for the dinner with the parents. Guess who's coming to dinner? So the two sets of parents are there. And the father is absolutely beside himself that his son should not marry a white woman. Absolutely beside himself. The white parents are less concerned. They're concerned, but they're less concerned than the Black mother and the father. And people would disagree. I'm like, oh, well, they're right to be more concerned. Whatever you think about that, you need to watch the whole film. It's so amazing. It was also Spencer Tracy's last appearance in film. He died not long after. He was already sick when he made this movie. It makes me cry every single time, but you definitely should watch it. So here's the key scene. I wish more people, young people in particular, saw this movie.
You say you don't want to.
Let me go back to the beginning. Sorry.
You listen to me. You say you don't want to tell me how to live my life. So what do you think you've been doing? You tell me what rights I've got or haven't got and what I owe to you for what you've done for me? Let me tell you something. I owe you nothing. If you carried that bag 1,000,000 miles, you did what you were supposed to do. Because you brought me into this world. And from that day, you owed me everything you could ever do for me, like I will owe my son if I ever have another. But you don't own me. You can't tell me when or where I'm out of line, or try to get me to live my life according to your rules. You don't even know what I am, Dad. You don't know who I am. You don't know how I feel, what I think. And if I tried to explain it the rest of your life, you will never understand. You are 30 years older than I am. You and your whole lousy generation believes the way it was for you is the way it's got to be. And not until your whole generation has lain down and died will the dead weight of you be off our backs. You understand? You've got to get off my back. Dad, you're my father. I'm your son. I love you. I always have, and I always will. But you think of yourself as a colored man. I think of myself as a man.
And there it is. I think of myself as a man. And that was in 1967. I was 1. And here we are in 2024. And I feel like we have gone backwards. It's more than 50 years later, guys, half a century. And we have young people today. Most of the people who came after me over the weekend for my comments about the Target Black Joy campaign, most of the ones who wished me death, most of the ones who said they never wanted me to work again were young. I mean, young, they're less than 30. Most of them probably under 20. They don't know that they've gone backwards. They don't know. They tell me what my life has been. They tell me what Black history in my life has been. What I've seen with my own eyes, they deny. My own experiences, they say never happened. And it's more than frustrating. It's scary because I have children. And if you do too, I imagine you probably feel similarly. Again, if you're following this channel and not hate following, you're paying to see this. So presumably you are somewhat simpatico. But yeah, it's concerning to me. That's why I decided to do this video. I would like to do more content this month in honor of Black History Month. I don't care who calls me names or says I have no right or, to speak on this because I'm the wrong color. I don't care. This is our history. We as a country were on our way to realizing the American dream for everyone. And very powerful forces who want us divided started working in earnest to manipulate us into hating each other. And it's working. It's working. And it makes me very sad. So I will leave you with that. Thank you for watching. As always, thank you for being a member. I'm so grateful. If you are simply watching this on YouTube as a member there, as opposed to Woke Screen, I would again invite you to join us over on Woke Screen in the Discord. There's more content over there, and there will be more to come as well, plus discounts on merch and other things. So thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.